So again, we're looking at this 21st slogan, this third one in the fifth point of the trainings, which is the point of assessing of all things. Who would have thought? The extent of proficiency in mind training. How are we doing? And it's interesting that this focus on a joyous state of mind as a constant support is in this section on the extent of proficiency. And as I have read the teachers, and you've read some of them as well, of course, there seem to be kind of two aspects to this. On the one, the extent of proficiency, the teachers are asking, do you have the support of a joyous mind? And we can all answer that to one degree or another. Perhaps your experience is, gee, most of the time I'm feeling pretty cheerful and joyful about things in the world, despite all the tragedies. And you might be thinking, almost never. I'm just so caught up in the travails and the ugliness of things that are going on, but it's so hard for me to touch this. And the aspect of the extent of proficiency is the practice lends itself to increasingly being able to see, be able to experience the beauty, the wonder, the awe, the joy, the contentment in life. And one of the ways of checking on how the practice is doing, grates on my nerves a little bit to even say that, is to just notice. Is there a modicum? Is there a little increase of my capacity to be present to the beauty of life, to the joys that are around me? Is that a part of the transformation that I'm experiencing, even in a small way? And the other aspect of a joyous state of mind as a constant support is the encouragement to cultivate that. And there are a lot of ways of doing that. And gratitude is certainly one of them. Let's just take a moment right now and let go. And bring to mind someone who has been of benefit to you. We've done this kind of meditation before. Bring to mind a benefactor. Someone you can think of who cared about you. Who wanted you to be happy. who was present for you in some way that was meaningful to you. And this person needn't be perfect or even close to it. But for that moment, there it was. And just allow yourself to be present to that person and that experience. An experience that brings to mind, I'm so happy, I'm so grateful, so thankful that you, in this way, have been are a part of what makes me who I am, causing conditions. And look at that one with the genuine gratitude that you experience around us. And notice it in your body. And notice the feeling tone there. As I do this practice, for me it's a quietly joyful one. And of course, we could continue this meditation and bring in another one and another one. We could bring in the ones from our friends and family, the teachers we've had. And we can also bring in those we may never have met, for whom we're so grateful. Perhaps Thich Nhat Hanh. Perhaps you feel a strong connection to another spiritual master that you've never met. So in that way, gratitude can be present, and that joy can be present as well. Another way of cultivating joy, Elizabeth brought it up last time around. Notice when something arises in our lives that is beautiful, and a feeling arises of, oh, it's wordless, perhaps. That feeling of, oh, it comes up. Stop for a minute. Don't just pass on. Savor, allow it to be present. When you walk out the door and the rain is still a little bit there and there's a rainbow in the sky, stop. Don't just get in the car and drive away. Breathe in that moment. Savor it. So often people say, oh, Buddhism, what a drag. It's all about suffering. And sometimes it seems it could be that way. But, the other part of it is this. There are the 5 hindrances, but there are also the 7 factors of awakening, these beautiful things that include joy. And they're the great thoughts, Brahma Viharas, of loving kindness, compassion, joy. It's interesting, it's often translated joy in the joy of others. You take joy in the joy that others may be experiencing around things. But a number of teachers have pointed out, just like Tom Glenn, you have to begin with yourself. Take joy in your own joy, or you won't really be able to experience sympathetic joy, where you're taking joy in the joys of others. to really allow ourselves to be completely present to joyful moments in itself is healing. But this is here too. Thich Nhat Hanh is someone who so very often talks about joy. And I'm just going to mention a couple of things that you've probably heard me say before, but probably worth repeating. And one is the morning gatha. I'm hoping as soon as I said that, for some of you at least, it pops up into your mind. It's one of the gathas, just put a plug in here, this little tiny book. Present moment, wonderful moment. It's the very first one. It says, Waking Up is the title of it. Waking up this morning, I smile. 24 brand new hours are before me. I vow to live fully in each moment and to look at all beings with eyes of compassion. Waking up this morning, I smile. Now, why in the world would you do that? I think a lot of us, waking up this morning, I groan. Another day is before me. So that first line is suggesting something to us in terms of how we greet the day. There's a monastic Venerable laity, one of Thai's very early initiates into the Lamb transmission as a Dharma teacher, who describes waking up and just not having that smile there. And she said to herself, I'm not moving until I can genuinely smile about something. So she took the time to explore what might be present in her life at that particular moment, for which she was grateful, for which she was happy, for which she was thankful. And was present to it until she could really, truly smile. And her example, I think, is a wonderful one. If our awakening thought after taking that first breath is, waking up this morning, I smile, and we find that that's not there, take the time. That's the starting point. Then 24 brand new hours are before me. And if you're smiling, that might be pretty good. And the fact of the matter is that 24 brand new hours are always before us unless we are entering the day in which we're going to die. So this gatha works all the time, not just in the morning. And it continues with the vow to really be present. And that includes, I vow to live fully in each moment, which includes the beautiful ones. Includes all of the wonderful ones. To live fully in those moments we can be so focused on when irritability arises, when anxiety arises, and so on. Well, when joy arises, let me be fully, completely present. And then from that place, to look at all beings with the eyes of compassion. So it moves to that lack of separation, being really present to all beings so completely that the compassion arises of its own accord. And he also emphasizes this in the 14 mindfulness trainings. For those of you who are not familiar with this, in Buddhism, of course, there are what are usually called the 5 precepts, which Thich Nhat Hanh has called the 5 mindfulness trainings, because he sees all these precepts as ways to help us see our course better. There are also the 14 mindfulness trainings in the same mode. They're based on precepts. And the 7th one is dwelling happily in the present moment. You might say dwelling joyfully in the present moment. This is what he says. Aware that life is available only in the present moment, and that it is possible to live happily in the here and now. We are committed to training ourselves to live deeply each moment of daily life. Again, it's kind of reflected in the Morning Gatha as well, isn't it? We will try not to lose ourselves in dispersion or be carried away by regrets about the past, worries about the future, or craving, anger, or jealousy in the present. Comment on that. Regrets about the past, worries about the future, craving, anger, jealousy in the present moment are what can prevent us from really being present to our joy. So he's looking at those obstacles and saying, be aware and don't get lost in them. We will practice mindful breathing to come back to what is happening in the present moment. We are determined to learn the art of mindful living by touching the wondrous, refreshing, and healing elements that are inside and around us, and by nourishing seeds of joy, peace, love, and understanding in ourselves, thus facilitating the work of transformation and healing in our consciousness. So he's really emphasizing here the transformative and healing qualities of being open to the wonder, to the refreshing elements, to the joy, to the love and peace that surround us. One of his pithier sayings is, I already have enough conditions to be happy. And we can ask, is that true? Do I have enough conditions to be happy? And to have that come to mind when we're not feeling happy, okay, I'm feeling kind of grumpy. And Thich Nhat Hanh is saying there's always the conditions available in the present moment to be happy. Is that true? And like that Morning Gatha, we can take a moment and to have a look. What is it present in my life right now? What is present that is Wonderful. Who is present that is loving and kind and caring, for whom I'm grateful? So it's the noticing, the coming back, the being willing to be present to that, and not losing ourselves in dispersion of, ain't it awful? And there's another way to cultivate. I'm going on here again. Another way to cultivate joy or happiness is to notice when you're not. And sometimes we kind of actively cultivate the opposite. One of the ones that's sort of one of my favorites is the game of Ain't It Awful? And the game of Ain't It Awful is when we're together with a couple of other people and someone says, geez, what's going on with the political situation? It's really, isn't it terrible? And somebody else says, yeah, and you think that is bad. What about this aspect? That is really just gets my goat. And then third person chimes in with their heaping on. And there's a sense of bonding and community in that playing of Ain't It Awful? But when you're done, you're left with this residue of awful. So if you happen to notice that you're playing that game, you might want to stop. And maybe I should. I think I will. Again, at this very moment, I'm experiencing a wonderful sense of gratitude for us being all together here. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.